turn things over to Rod and Carol Orr, who are tag teaming tonight to first connect us to our congregation's faith roots that shape our approach to hunger. And second, they will introduce our speaker. Rod and Carol?
The ELCA approach to hunger is based on Matthew 25:35. For I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. God richly provides for daily bread. The earth can produce enough food for everyone, yet many of our sisters and brothers still go hungry. By providing immediate relief to those who are hungry, we meet basic needs and recognize the universal human right to food. But ending hunger is about more than food. By connecting people with the resources they need to produce food and gain access to clean water, education, healthcare, and sources of income, long-term sustainable change can be accomplished. We start with relationships marked by conversation and listening. We believe people know their own communities best. It is our congregations and our global companion churches that first identify the local needs and related solutions to help make a difference. Then we partner with communities to help make those solutions a reality. Working through ELCA congregations, global companion churches, the Lutheran World Federation, and other partners like Bread for the World, Church World Service, Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service, and Lutheran World Relief, the ELCA reaches more places more effectively than we could ever do alone. In addition to funding relief and development projects that assist our sisters and brothers in need, we engage members of the ELCA in education and advocacy to help change the systems that perpetuate poverty. Through this comprehensive approach, we work to address hunger from all angles, both domestically and globally. Before I pass this on to Rod, I'd like to read to you a portion of a poem called The Great Tablecloth by Pablo Neruda, translated by Alistair Reed Wuthering. Eating alone is disappointment, but not eating matters more, is hollow and green, has thorns like a child of fishhooks trailing from the heart, clawing at your insides. Hunger feels like pincers, like the bite of crabs. It burns and has no fire. Hunger is a cold fire. Let us sit down to eat with all those who haven't eaten. Let us spread great tablecloths, put salt in the lakes of the world, set up planetary bakeries, tables with strawberries and snow, and a plate like the moon itself from which we can all eat. For now, I ask no more than the justice of eating. And Rod will now introduce our speaker for tonight.
I'd like to introduce Jack Schmidt, is Senior Regional Organizer with Bread for the World, a collective Christian voice urging our nation's decision makers to end hunger at home and abroad. Based in Crystal Lake, Illinois, Zach is responsible for identifying, training, and equipping leaders and congregations in the Midwest to actively engage in advocacy to end hunger. Zach studied Bible and theology at Bethel University, St. Paul, Minnesota, and Fuller Theological Seminary in Pasadena, California. Bread for the World is the front lines of addressing the hunger crisis and helping ensure all of God's children are fed, both now and in the years to come. And let's welcome Zach.
Thank you, Carolyn, Rod, and Pastor Kretzer. Good to be with you all. Can everyone hear me okay? Still? Yes? Okay. Just have to make sure. Yeah, so appreciate this opportunity, and I'm going to share just a short video in just a moment that explains bread. But first of all, yes, as the introduction stated, I live in Crystal Lake, and I cover the Midwestern states for Bread for the World. So I'm a neighbor in terms of my whole region, even though I'm about 5 hours north of you all or so. Yeah, my role, I've been with Bread for about 12 years, and my role is to work with people like you all and churches to connect you with advocacy opportunities as a ministry and a way to help end hunger. So yeah, I don't know if I can't remember if the introduction stated this, but I have a family here, and hopefully they won't be bursting through the door while I'm talking. So I try to keep them out, but I think we all understand that these days. So, but yes, so I'm going to share a video about bread, and then I have some slides to share as well, and then look forward to addressing some questions. So give me just a second while I pull that up. Okay. So that's it, pretty short and sweet. Hopefully you found that inspirational. Can you all still hear me okay? Is volume okay? Yeah? Thumbs up? Okay, very good. I wanted to make sure it would transition between the video and the slides. So yeah, and that's available on our YouTube page as well, if you should want to check that out. So yeah, well, this has already been, I think, shared a little bit, but just to reiterate, Bread for the World, we are a collective Christian voice urging our nation's decision makers to end hunger here in the US and around the world. Our work is advocacy, as was mentioned in the ELCA statement earlier, as one form of ministering to those who are hungry, and that's really that's how we minister at Bread. So we specialize in that. We devote our energy to the research and the policy analysis, and then the advocacy that can help people who are struggling with hunger through policy change. It was mentioned, the Matthew 25 passage was mentioned, and we certainly make use of that. We like that at Bread as well. Another one that I wanted to mention that I find powerful, and maybe you all have heard this one as well, but Proverbs 31 verses 8 through 9. It says, "Open your mouth for the mute, for the rights of all who are destitute. Open your mouth, judge righteously, and defend the rights of the poor and needy." Which is interesting. There aren't a lot of such clear, sort of statements of advocacy, because that's what advocacy is in the Bible. But that one is there, Proverbs 31, 8 through 9. So that one's written to a king, but nowadays, in our form of government, our representative democracy, we all share a role in helping govern. So it speaks to all of us and the importance of using our voice to speak up for on behalf of others, and especially those who are less fortunate. So a few things to share about Bread, a few bullet points, if you will, about who we are. Bread is ecumenical. We were founded in the 1970s by a Lutheran pastor, Art Simon. Some of you may know that name. But from the very beginning, the group of kind of leaders who launched Bread and kind of, made it happen, it was a ecumenical group. And that continues to this day. We have good relationships, certainly with the ELCA, but a number of other Protestant and Catholics as well. So, we're bipartisan as well. And that is, I think, especially important, both to note. And then also, I think it's, we see hunger not as a partisan issue, but as a human issue. And we want to bring people together from, across both sides of the aisle and from all across the spectrum around advocacy to end hunger. So I think that's especially needed these days, as things seem to get more and more partisan and polarized in our country. So we, as I mentioned, we were founded in the 70s. So we've been at this for a number of years now. We've had a lot of success along the way, helping to launch programs and get them off the ground, like the WIC program, helping protect programs like SNAP and make them more efficient, foreign aid. And we're a way to maximize personal letters and emails. So one of the things we talk about is with advocacy, we're addressing, kind of systemic, structural kinds of issues that make it more challenging for people to get enough to eat. But it's also one way to look at it is, we're sort of maximizing or multiplying the impact because of the resources and the power of Congress and our government. Reaching out to our Congress can do a lot and help a lot of people with, or hurt a lot of people with what they do. So that's one way to think about it as well, with a big impact both here and around the world. I just wanted to share a few photos. One of the things we do at Bread is we have an annual Advocacy Summit in Washington, D.C. You all are invited. It's in June, and this year it was virtual. So who knows what will happen this coming year? I don't think anyone really knows, but that's a time when people come together and we worship, and then we meet with members of Congress. But really, that builds on the letter writing that happens across the country and in churches, throughout the year. So this is just one form of advocacy, that those direct meetings with members of Congress. And as I mentioned earlier, we have had through the years and decades a lot of impact helping people who are struggling with hunger. Just a couple things to mention. Just last year, we had advocated for an additional $5 million for global nutrition programs, particularly for women and children. And that will allow us to reach more than 200,000 more women and 142,000 more children, So again, you can see, and the numbers get, it kind of makes our eyes glaze over, right? But when we think about each individual family and woman and child, that's a lot of help that we're able to provide and again, to multiply. And then as you can see more specifically, I won't go through all those points, but what the $5 million could do. So that was one recent victory. And then we've also been working internationally on global food security initiatives. And last year we were able to reach our government, I should say, was able to reach nearly 28.5 million children with nutrition services, helping lay a foundation for, a more productive and well-nourished life. So just a couple of things, but again, we've also in recent years protected programs. There's been a lot of threats to cut funding for programs like SNAP, food stamps, and we've been a part of efforts to protect against those cuts. So I do want to go into a little bit of kind of what we are working on specifically this year. And I understand from Pastor Kratzer that you all have an opportunity, and I wanted to, I'm glad to invite you to participate in this, to write a letter or a few letters and either bring them to church on Sunday, as I understand your first kind of in-person gathering, starting those up again, or if you're not coming on Sunday, to mail it off yourself. But I want to explain a little bit about kind of what that campaign is. And so, kind of what we're writing about. And this is, again, something that churches across the country have done throughout this year and are continuing to do this fall. So, So basically our campaign, so we started off the year, like I think all of us, having really no idea about what was coming, but in 2020, I should say. And so we have this campaign called Better Nutrition, Better Tomorrow. And so last year in 2019, we focused on global nutrition for mothers and children. This year, the plan had been to kind of build on that advocacy and also turn our attention here to children in the US. So it's kind of both a domestic US focus and an international focus. So again, some of this information is pre-COVID, but I think it's still worth sharing. Over the past 30 years or so, broadly speaking, global hunger and poverty rates have been cut nearly in half. So, and that's a little known fact, I think, and it's really remarkable because that's true even as, of course, global population has dramatically increased, but hunger and poverty have gone way down, which is huge. And so that's been great. And so we have really seen that progress and have a good sense of how to continue making that progress. But still, more than 1 in 5 children under the age of 5 are not getting the nutrition, not growing as they should be. Millions are dangerously thin. So we've been making a lot of progress, but there's still a lot of need, of course. And then here in the US, and again, pre-COVID, 1 in 7 children live in food insecure homes. I'll get to kind of just a moment what's happened since COVID a little bit. It's been hard to kind of get a good grasp on actual data, but and then just a little bit, I think, just to kind of make kind of grasp what is food insecurity, what is hunger like. Here in the US, we're not necessarily talking about starvation, right, or famines. But it still impacts one's health. Children who suffer from hunger, food insecurity have more headaches and colds and other illnesses. It's more challenging to learn and to focus, as teachers can do tell us. We also note that summer is the hungriest time of the year, and children not in school who are receiving the free or reduced price meals, and some, but not a lot, are getting, nutrition assistance during the summer months. So that's been a real focus for Bread for the World as well, helping address that summer hunger challenge. But this year, again, so this was kind of what we were set out in the beginning of the year, and then COVID hit and kind of scrambled everything, right? Everyone's plans and all sorts of things. But then Congress, which is again where we kind of focus our advocacy and who we're calling on to address hunger, was really shifted their attention to how to respond to the pandemic. And so Bread for the World did as well, and wanting to make sure that as Congress addresses the pandemic and helps our country, that they're remembering those who are most vulnerable and hungry. But again, we don't have a lot of great data, but from what we have kind of recently seen, it looks like around 1 in 3 families with children, sorry for the typo there, do not have enough to eat here in our country. And that's really, really stark and really serious and dramatic. Worldwide, more than 270 million people, not 270 people, are on the brink of I wish it was 270, but over 250 million people, as we see kind of famines or beginnings of famines. So COVID has just exacerbated the hunger that's been there. And then in the Metro East area, bringing it more close to kind of your community, Feeding America, which is the network of food banks, has projected around a 50% increase in child food insecurity this year. And again, that data typically is delayed, so it's a projection, but I think we all know, and what we've heard anecdotally from food banks, we've seen the photos, food pantries, the need has increased dramatically, seeing and serving a lot more people. So it's all the more urgent, the work that we're doing and calling on Congress. So our goals for this year, the bottom two goals 2 and 3 were what we set out at the beginning of the year, but then the first one now is, of course, after COVID, but respond to and influence any additional COVID legislation so that it helps people who are struggling with hunger, both in our country and around the world, strengthen nutrition programs in the US, and then support legislation that strengthens US leadership and increases funding for global nutrition. So they all kind of go together though as well. And, you know, the nutrition issue has been, or COVID has made made a case for us of why nutrition is important too. And it helps keep people healthier through virus, through sickness and illness. And so yeah, that's kind of what we're working on. You know, I forgot to mention, and I want to just circle back real quick too, because along with kind of the broad victories that Bread for the World has been a part of, and what I shared earlier, you all might be excited to know that we have some Bread for the World kind of member volunteers, advocates in the Metro East area, and there's a team that meets in Edwardsville. I'll mention that a little more later. So I've been working with them through the years a fair amount, but the members of Congress in your area, and we have Congressman Rodney Davis, Congressman John Shimkus, and Congressman Mike Bost. And I'm guessing, you know, your church might have members in all three of those districts, perhaps. I mean, they kind of all come together right in the Maryville area, actually. But these members, through the outreach of Bread members, through letters and phone calls, advocacy, they had actually signed on as supporters, co-sponsors of some of the legislation that Bread has been working on in the last few years, the Global Food Security Act being one of those, a global nutrition resolution. So it's, and we've really worked in a bipartisan way to try to make the case for why this is something they should support, making a moral case, making a fiscal case. And so that's been really good. So on the international issues, the members of Congress in your area, the representatives have been very supportive. Senators, certainly Senator Durbin and Duckworth, which we all share, I share as well, have been very supportive as well. So that's good. So that's, again, thanks to the work of Bread churches, and then specifically some Bread members doing outreach and advocacy. So letter writing at Bread. So advocacy, as I mentioned, is our thing. And I should have mentioned this earlier too, but letters are kind of our main main method of advocacy, if you will, or at least for churches, for groups. That's been the case for decades, really, and they continue to have real impact. We also do encourage phone calls and emails at times in-person meetings, or these days Zoom meetings. Pastor Kratzer is actually going to be a part of one of those meetings tomorrow with Congressman Davis and a group of others in the area. So, but for congregations, we do encourage handwritten letters, and we call it the offering of letters. And we really want to encourage those letters to be personal. Personal forms of advocacy are always more impactful on our members of Congress, and frankly, impactful on ourselves when we put, a bit more thought and, attention to what we're doing. But we also understand, and as any advocacy group does, that, you also want numbers too. You want quantity, but you also want quality. So sometimes, we invite people just to click and send an email, and that's fine too, but again, we're always kind of gently nudging people toward more personal forms of advocacy. So again, you all, and I do want to encourage you to participate in your church's offering of letters this coming weekend. And so what we're going to share after, I think Pastor Kratzer is going to share a sample letter that Bread for the World has currently, that we want to encourage you to, basically write that out by hand, but we encourage you to personalize that, add a note, mention, if you're involved in the hunger ministry, if you've, mentioned something about your faith, if you had an experience in another country, that kind of thing. Those kinds of things really increase the impact, frankly, or just, touch the heart, pull on the heartstrings of our members of Congress and their staff. So this is, don't have to write this down, obviously, but this is what our current letter is to Congress, and what we are currently asking for I think everyone, you all know about the these ongoing COVID negotiations for like, what is Congress going to do, and President Trump and the Treasury Secretary, and that's been a real roller coaster. Of course, we thought that they were going to pass another package over the summer, and then that didn't happen, and then we've been hoping and working, to make that happen this fall. It's very unclear, but people are still struggling as I just kind of laid out. I mean, the need is there, it's increased. And we've even seen statements recently that, in terms of our economy, more assistance is needed. So even if you want to take that angle, but anyway, but we at Bread, we take the people who are struggling with hunger, really need help. And so we're asking Congress to increase SNAP benefits by at least 15%. And we're asking them to invest $20 billion for a global response. So helping our neighbors here and helping our neighbors in other parts of the country. Just want to wrap up with a few more things of how you can get involved, and then look forward to taking some questions and conversation. So again, as I've been mentioning, participate in the offering of letters. Glad you guys are doing that. I want to thank Pastor Kretzer for that, and you all. I should have said too, so we will send around that sample letter, and we want to, we encourage you to write 3 letters, one to each senator, Senator Durbin, Senator Duckworth, and then one to your representative. So it takes, maybe five minutes, depending on how fast you write, 5 minutes per letter or so. But yeah, we want to encourage that. And again, either bring those to church or send them off, and we'll have instructions on that. If you don't know who your representative is, and maybe you don't, like I said, the district boundaries are all confusing in your area, and frankly, everywhere in Illinois, but, especially in the Metro East. You can go to house.gov, which is the House of Representatives website. And then you can enter your zip code. And sometimes you'll have to enter your actual street address, because zip codes are dissected as well sometimes. So, but yeah, you can find out who your representative is at house.gov. Also want to encourage and invite you to become a member of Bread. We are a membership organization. We have church members, we have individual members who support our work and who receive updates and take action and really make our impact possible. So you can go to bread.org/join to become a Bread member. And a couple other things to draw your attention to, because there's a lot of information there, but I did mention earlier, there is a local Bread group in the Metro East area. They meet Jane Klopfenstein, who is at, I don't know if any of you know that name, but she's in Edwardsville. She's at St. John's United Methodist, and she is the team leader of the Edwardsville Bread team. Although I don't think it's just Edwardsville, and in any case, these days they're meeting via Zoom. But it's against an ecumenical group, and they get together, they talk about some updates from Bread for the World. I think they try to write letters each time. They have some devotional material, and then they're also going through a book study as well. So feel free to check them out. Jane would love for you to pop in, and if you're interested, you can email her or give her a call. And I guess we should we'll make sure we send around these slides as well, so then you can look back at this information, so you don't have to write it down. And then so they meet their next meeting is November 2nd. So day before the elections. Be a lot to talk about, I'm sure. So, and then the final thing is, I want to also invite you to our next Midwest regional webinar on November 17th. We've been holding quarterly webinar presentations, basically updates on kind of, progress that we've made on legislation we've worked on, what's been happening in the Midwest, what Bread members have been doing in the Midwest, and then next steps for what to do for the rest of the year, maybe into early next year. And then this time we're excited that we have a guest speaker typically each time. This time it's going to be our new president, Reverend Eugene Cho. He just started in July, so that'll be a good opportunity to hear from him. So those are a few things to bring to your attention. And then of course, reach out to me. I put my phone number and email. We'll get that around as well. But I'm always looking for, people who are churches and then individuals who are interested in personal kind of individual advocacy as well. So would love to stay in touch. So that's it. Would love to take some questions or, conversation, however we want to do that now.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Zach. Now we'll enter into a time of question and answer for Zach. If you have any questions for Zach, please feel free to open your mic and ask your questions. And if you don't feel comfortable asking them, you can put them in the chat. I did see that Carol put sort of a thought and a question all in one in the chat already. And or I guess it's not Carol, it's Dave. But he said the good news of the reduction in global poverty / hunger is sometimes lost in the doom and gloom of immediate problems. Which is more important in this progress, direct food aid or economic progress in developing countries?
That's a great question, and thanks for that. And yeah, you're right about the statement at the beginning too, about that good news getting lost. So we want to lift that up as much as we can. To the question, I would definitely say, and maybe this is what you're assuming already, but the latter, economic progress in developing countries, is going to, and actual development, if you will, is going to be more important, more lasting, frankly, and the direct, we need direct food aid because there are immediate needs, and so we need direct food assistance, direct financial assistance, but really overall, what Bread wants, what I think most other organizations and people who are paying attention to these issues, studying these issues, is to be a partner in helping countries, developing countries, strengthen their economies, their systems, their agricultural sector, so they're growing enough food, so they're able to, provide jobs for their people, and that they're basically able to kind of lift themselves up, and so if it's only direct food aid, then that is going to be in the long run detrimental, because countries need to be able to produce their own food, sell their own food, and so we're trying to, and Bread, and this is something that I think the world has come to realize in the last decade or two, that we've actually done in some ways some harm because we've overemphasized, and in part there was, going back, this is maybe getting more information than you wanted, but going back to maybe the 1950s or so, when there was a major kind of farm surplus for US farmers, and that was a real problem, and so there was a solution was kind of arrived at that essentially converted that. So the US government kind of purchased the surplus to help American farmers, sent that abroad to countries that were struggling with hunger, and made a lot of sense then. And but nowadays, I mean, things have changed. Surplus isn't necessarily there. And we've also learned that, unless there's that immediate need, what's really most important is, again, the allowing countries and supporting countries with the tools, with the skills, with the knowledge to be able to grow their own food, feed their own people, and develop that way. So long answer, good question, but yeah, it's a really important issue. So I'm glad you brought that up.